fifth class we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about how to set up routines in the home and use a lot of the fundamentals that we've been talking about in order to help kind of groove those routines in. Just raise your hand and tell me, what is a routine that you would love that your loved one would do in home? What's a routine? Yes?
Clean himself after using the bathroom.
Ah, okay. That is something that needs to be done in steps.
Correct.
There needs to be steps to it. I've finished using the restroom. That is my signal. We've been talking about a signal and the behavior and the reward. That's my signal to gather toilet paper. Use the toilet paper, but then check to make sure I'm clean. And then once I check and I pass that check, that's my signal to get up and leave the restroom. So you have to learn those things in a certain sequence. And see, now you guys are all armed with the power and the knowledge that our brain needs a signal to tell us to engage in a behavior. So that's essentially what you'll be teaching. If we have this, I just want to show this fundamental up here because this is a great example. So your son, right, like, what's the reward that he's looking for at the end of this routine? What does he want to do as soon as he's done?
We'll leave the bathroom.
Leave the bathroom.
He
wants to exit the bathroom. So, like, that's really his reward at the end, is that he gets to leave the bathroom and go do something else that he sees fun. If I want to establish a new rule or a new routine, new behavior that I want him to do, I've got to insert a new reward. So I have to have a new reward. Now I can use the leave the bathroom still as the reward, which is you're not going to leave the bathroom until I check you and you're clean. I can do that. I tend to call that the tears method, right? The no tears method, or the limited tears method, is I find something that he really likes, so that then when he does the checkout with me and he's clean, or we're just doing it together, he's going to get a reward. He's going to get something that he wants for building his way up to being clean. He probably can't go right now from just wiping the back of his leg to thoroughly wiping himself multiple times. Right? It might be he does one pretty good wipe, and then I finish and I show him this is what clean looks like. You're all set, and then I kind of move on. Right? But we'll keep talking about, because I'm going to kind of get into some examples. If you have a powerful enough reward that he can only get, that only unlocks when he has been verified to be clean after a bowel movement, then he comes to you. And that was something we talked about last class when we talked about setting up a reinforcement system that I have in here too. You know you have something good when the person is coming to you and looking at you. Right? You don't want to be chasing your son around. Are you clean? Are you clean? Let me look in your. But if you remember the video where we're grooving in those paths, right? This is how the paths get grooved in. Right now, the groove that he's in is use the restroom, wipe in some form or fashion, and then get back to doing whatever I've been doing. That's the groove. That's the pattern that's grooved in. The new one we want is wipe until clean. Right? It's not just wipe. It's not just take all the toilet. I've seen that. You know? Well, I just took a bunch of toilet paper off the ream, and then I threw it in, and I've now wiped. It's that you're clean. It's that you don't have any skids, or whatever you want to call it. You know? And then that's where the reward kind of comes in. So it's interesting to break that one down, because that might be more, if he already knows the steps and the nuts and bolts, then you can just have that reward. You know? Yeah, because if he already knows how to wipe, so he does, yeah?
He does.
The mechanics
the
of
double
how.
check, the triple check.
Yeah, then you could just almost skip a step and just go to the reward.
Yeah.
What are some other routines? Yeah, brushing teeth. That's kind of a classic one. Good one to start with. Brushing teeth is a perfect example of another thing that has to happen step by step by step. And you have to teach kind of each step. So that's good. We're going to kind of get into that. Dressing, the technical term that we have for these is called the sequential skills. So it's something that has to be done in a sequence. And I'm going to show you kind of how we break that down. So, all right. So we got some, I think those are some really good goals to go after. So what are we going to cover tonight? I'm going to review the fundamentals, the principles, because I do that every night. And again, it's not just because I think they're cool. I do think they're cool. but it's because they're going to apply to everything that we're doing. And then we're going to talk about some routine steps, and we're going to break things down and show you what a task analysis is. And then I'm going to show you how to chain the steps together. And that's really the key, how you chain the steps together. So that the completion of one step is my signal to do the next step. Right? So I put on my underwear, that's my signal to put on my pants. That's my signal to put on my shirt. Right? One has to be the signal to then do the other, and then you chain the steps together. And that's really the secret. So, reviewing our fundamentals, we have our first one here. Everybody knows and loves my nice, fancy, very expensive scale, where we have our reward and our effort. Extremely important. Can't ever forget this. This is also important here. If we're going to come up with a reward for being clean, I have to have a reward that's more powerful than the effort that I'm asking for. So I can't just look at the task and say, the task of cleaning myself after bowel movement is the same effort for everyone. I can't say it, right? And if there's some sensory difficulties there, the effort's going to be a little bit higher. I might have to go and search myself a higher reward. But remember that the effort's going to be different for everyone, the same way the reward's going to be a little bit different. And if I'm asking for more effort, then I have to give more reward. And if I'm only going to give a smaller reward, then I have to cut down the effort. So the way that I would cut down the effort with your son is that I would have to get back into the bathroom, and I would have to go back and do some of the wiping. You might have to do that. You never know. If you don't have a powerful enough reward, if I've only got a 5, then I can only ask for the 5 effort. You know, if I've got a 5 reward and I'm asking for the 8 effort, yeah, right? Now he's like, doesn't matter, you know? So sometimes you have to move some of those levers, you know, potentially. We want it to look like this. Lots of reward, very low effort. This is going to work out over time. Okay? Now our next fundamental, and this one is going to be really, really important tonight. So we talked about when we're grooving that path, we have our cue, so our signal. Something happens that signals my brain that I can engage in a behavior and then get a reward. The only thing that we're going to be adding to that tonight is that we're going to be doing a signal that then leads us to the next step. And then we complete that step, that signals us to go to the step after that. And then my reward is either going to be at the end of doing all of the steps, or if I really need to, I can enter in a reward at the completion of each step. It's really going to depend. All right? But that's going to be my cue. My signal is going to be the completion of the step. And one way that I like to explain this is, let's think back to that time when we were 16 or 16 and a half, or however old everyone was, and they learned how to drive a car. First driver's test. Thankfully, that's exactly where I was going. When you first learned how to drive a car, and you sat in the driver's seat for the very first time, how did you feel? Right. Nervous or confident? I was nervous. I was super nervous, right? My brain hadn't embedded into it yet the sequential skills needed to drive, even start a car, right? But if you break down that task, it's the same thing that I'm talking about here, where every time I complete a step, that prompts me to go to the next step. So I sit down in the car, that would prompt me to put the keys in the ignition. I put the keys in the ignition, that prompts me to turn the keys. The car is now on. That tells me that I can put the car in gear. Once the car's in gear, that tells me I can lift my foot up off the brake. I forgot the part about putting my foot on the brake before I put it in the gear, right? So I have to learn all these things in a sequence. And in the beginning, before I know the sequence, someone really has to teach me that one leads to the next. Because if I didn't put my foot on the brake before I put the car in reverse, I'm going to start going backwards. And then I'm going to panic. Like, how do I make that stop happening? All right? Once I learn the sequence, then I feel comfortable, my brain knows what to do next. Especially if I'm teaching someone to brush their teeth for the very first time, or I'm teaching someone to dress themselves for the very first time. That it's just like when I learned how to drive a car. It's the same thing, and I have to learn those things in a step change kind of way. So I did want to do a quick review from the last class. So last class we talked about setting up a reward system, a reinforcement system in your home. A couple key things that we talked about. We talked about making sure that it was consistent. We talked about them coming to you for reinforcement. And I was kind of talking about that a little bit here. But then we also talked about this question. What do they like about what they currently like? Because oftentimes I can't just come up to someone and just say, hey, what do you find rewarding? We often don't know what that is, or there might be something that we might find very rewarding that we don't even know about. This right here is a worksheet that we use that kind of helps just break down this process when I'm trying to find new and improved reinforcers. Because if I come back here and I come back to this basic fundamental, if I only have a 2 reward, I can only ask for a 2 effort. And if I have no reward, I can't ask for really any effort. Right? So the more reward I can find, the more reinforcers I can find, the more effort I can then ask for. So what I have filled out on this sheet here, the first question is, what do they like about what they like? So Lisa, I'll ask you this for your son. If he could do whatever he wanted to do in a day, like his best day ever. So he's in his room, he's watching TV, he's watching cartoons. So this would be like if I was going to work with your son, I would go here. And I would say, what does he like about those cartoons? So the first thing I probably have to do is I probably have to come up with kind of a list of the cartoons. What are some of his most preferred ones? But then I have to come up with an answer to what does he like about those cartoons? Is it that they're funny? Is it that they have characters that he likes? Is it that they have a storyline that he can follow? Because the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to start to show him maybe something new. Maybe a new cartoon that he hasn't seen yet, that he just hasn't come across. And I want to measure and see how he responds to that new cartoon. Because if I can find a cartoon that he doesn't know about yet, or a movie or something that he likes, I've now upped my reward number. Right? And then I can ask for more effort from him. But if all I'm going to offer him are the same cartoons and things that he's already been watching and he's already been seeing, then that's not going to be that reinforcing for him because he can get that for free. If I'm setting up a reinforcement system, the rewards I'm using can't be things that you already get for free. I can't say, well, we usually give the pizza for free, but tonight, Felicia, I'm charging you $5 for that pizza. See? You're like, wait, what? Whoa, no, I used to get it for free, and now it's $5. But maybe if I came in and said, hey, you can have the free pizza, but we got this amazing Italian food from this place down the street. It's usually $10, but today for you it's only $5. Now you're like, ooh, maybe I try that too. The more reinforcement you're going to find, the easier you're going to be to teach any skills that we talk about tonight, and really any skills in general. Right? This just isn't something that I think we do as part of our natural kind of practice. And I know this from my own children too. I'm potty training my 2-year-old. So we're constantly trying to find, even just this morning he's crying, I don't want to go in the potty, I don't want to do this. When he's crying and telling me he doesn't want to go in the potty and he doesn't want to watch the videos that I'm offering him, what he's telling me is Dad, you are asking for more effort than the reward that you are offering me. That's what he's actually saying with crying and I don't want to do that. So then for me, my job at that point, what I need to do is, well, I can do 2 things. I can either reduce the effort, right? Which in our case is pretty tough because he's getting rewarded just for any amount of pee that goes in the little potty. Okay, but I guess I could technically go backward and say, okay, now all you have to do is sit on the potty, and then I'll give the reward. Or, and this is more what I would recommend, I find a more powerful reinforcer. And then I can ask for more effort. If we're talking about the context of this class, what you're coming here to get some strategies to do with your loved one is probably something that is a high effort response for them. Because if it was a low effort response, you would have just asked them to do it, they'd do it, and you wouldn't come and talk to me about it. Right? So it's probably by default going to be a high effort response. And so we've got to find these high level reinforcers. So YouTube already does this. You know all the videos on the side?
Mm-hmm.
All the suggested videos? YouTube's already doing this concept.
Yeah.
Which is, hey Tim, I noticed you like Yo Gabba Gabba. So I think that you'd also like, and then it's already doing this process for me. So it's already showing me all the stuff on the side. You know? And that's why a lot of times you can just kind of give the phone and it just YouTube already does it for you. But maybe it just needs to be exposed to some new things, and then you kind of find something that it gets into. But that is the second part of this. You come up with this hypothesis first, and then you test it. Right? So I'm going to come up with what I think that someone might like about the party, and then I come up with a test, and then I see how they respond to it. You know, because I might not always be able to guess. Maybe I think what your son likes about the party is that it's in his honor and there's special food. But if I give him a party like that another time and he's kind of like, I don't really care, then I got to go back to the drawing board a little bit, you know? And that's what I'm kind of doing here. So what I did here in this example is, and this was actually based on my son too. I did this for the last class, right? So I had a couple theories about some of the things that he was watching on YouTube. So the first one was watching videos with fast cars, right? So I showed him a NASCAR race on YouTube, and he loved it. So I'm like, ooh, okay, so that might be a good thing. Maybe I can then show more videos with fast cars, and he still likes that now. Then I came down here and I said, well, maybe it's just that it's fast graphics or something fast that's happening. So I showed a Spider-Man episode, really fast graphics, and at that time, so this was like almost a year ago, he didn't really like that much. So I'm like, okay, it isn't necessarily that there's fast graphics, it's that he must like the car part of that video. And that's turned out to be 100% true. This was like a year ago, but he loves cars. So he likes watching NASCARs, he likes the Cars movie, he likes cars, right? And that's my other reinforcer that I'm trying to work on now, is I've got the little car action figures that go along with it, but it's not seeming to be strong enough, so I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board. And so that's kind of the push and pull that you get is do I have a powerful enough reinforcer? And a lot of times I just got to go and I got to really do some investigating. And I got to pull it out. Because it's pretty rare, especially if I'm working with a little one, that I can walk up to them and say, what would be enough reward for you to do this right now? You know? Like, I want you to go pee-pee in the potty. What would be a big enough reward for you to do that? My son's then going to go, and run away from me, you know, and kick the potty on his way out or something. So I'm highly recommending this, both in what we're going to talk about tonight, but even just a general recommendation of building motivation. You can use this worksheet that we had as a handout, or you can kind of do it on your own and post it. It's a pretty basic thing, you know, but really, really powerful. And, you know, something that I think when you look at therapists that are very effective, they're doing this oftentimes. They're finding those powerful reinforcers. Question on that? Still asking for the same truck. So this is an interesting one right here. He has 5 of them already and he wants more. So let's use this as another example. What does he do with the truck? He plays with it, pretends, and then does he have a certain one of the 5 trucks that he likes the most? Or will he just find the closest one to him, and it's the W.B. Mason truck, and he's going to drive it around? It could be number 1, it could be number 5, it could be number 3, it doesn't really matter. Okay, all right. Will he play with any other trucks?
He does, yeah. He has a lot of toys.
Does he do anything special with the logo? Does he ever like draw the logo or look up pictures of the logo?
Yeah, he does that online.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you're getting to something really good. I think Sherry's on a good point. So then if I'm answering this first question about what does he like about what he likes, it's not so much that it's a truck. It's that it's a W.B. Mason truck that he has memories attached to of going to the store with his grandfather, right? And so it's more than just a truck. It's a W.B. Mason truck. So I would come over here and say, all right, well, what other W.B. Mason things might we be able to provide or look up or print out that he colors in? Does he start making his own trucks? And what does he like about W.B. Mason? Is it that they deliver things? Can he start to deliver things? Yeah, and he's pretending like he's Kevin. He's the delivery driver. I would go full in with this. I would go full in where he sets up his own W.B. Mason store in your house, and he's putting it up because now you got all this reinforcement on the other side, right? So now this is all strong. We're going to build our own W.B. Mason store. You're going to become Kevin, right? And you're going to put up the logo over here because now you can color the logo, set up the store, and then you can teach within that context. You said you have our service right now, right? You have therapists in your house?
Yeah.
They can teach right inside that context. And he's doing it. It's fun. It's something that he likes.
You can go to
I love
Staples and get W.B. Mason products like paper.
Right.
Like, you could buy things. Like, you could take him and he could get stuff for his store that has the logo all over it.
The car was over here, but there's a lot deep. It was a lot more than just a truck. It was more than just a truck. And then that's your theory. It's that, and it's more than just W.B. Mason, too. He's like looking at Kevin. He wants to be like Kevin. He wants to deliver, and there's a store. And you just keep coming up with all these other items and all these other activities. Now you have something really powerful, something really motivating for your son, right? That he's going to want to engage with. And then we can start getting ourselves over here. So now we can say, hey, Daniel, we are totally going to set up the logo tonight. We're definitely going to do the logo. We just got to get our teeth brushed. Just got to get our teeth brushed. And you know what? I'm going to help you out with the first steps. All you're going to do is tonight is just put the toothbrush in the hole, right? That's it. And then we're going to go and do the W.B. Mason. And then you're going to be able to chain that together. And we're going to talk about that here. But it almost doesn't do a whole lot of good to know how to do the chaining if you don't have a powerful reinforcer. If you don't have a powerful enough reinforcer, we all know what that feels like. It was me this morning chasing my son around the house. I can just keep chasing him around. Not going to do it. The best I can hope for is that I wear him down or something, or he wears me down, and then he eventually doesn't. But he's not going to really learn the task until I have the reinforcer. So we have a toothbrushing example right here. All right. So the first thing that we start off with is we have to decide what are the steps that we're going to teach. Right? The technical term for this is a task analysis, but you don't have to really worry about that all that much, right? But you do have to think about, what steps am I going to teach? So if I'm going to teach brushing teeth, what steps am I going to do? Now, I just chose these steps, right? Please do not think that this is some sort of definitive list, and it's the only way to teach someone how to brush their teeth, right? There's multiple ways to kind of brush your teeth, isn't there? I like the brush teeth example because they say, how many people wet the toothbrush before they put the toothpaste on? Who does that? I do that. Okay. But some people don't, though. How many people then, after they put the toothpaste on, wet it again?
Yeah.
See, I do too, but you don't have to. You'll be fine. You don't even have to wet it the first time. You can just put the toothpaste in. So don't think that this is the only way to teach brushing teeth. Okay? Don't take that. But what I do want you to take from this, though, is that I have my signal, and then I have the routine. So I say it's time to brush your teeth. That needs to be the cue for the child to go to the bathroom. Once they get in the bathroom, right, that's the cue to get the toothbrush. Once they get the toothbrush, that's the cue to put on the toothpaste. Once they put on the toothpaste, so you see this thing that we were talking about the signal? Once I complete one step, that's my signal to move on to the next step. So there's a couple different ways that I can break it down over here. If I come in and I say, all right, Daniel, the only way that we're going to be able to play with our W.B. Mason store is if you do all this independently on your own, and it's the first time you've ever done it, that effort's like off the charts. So I have to move the effort this way, and the way that I can move it is I give assistance either up here in the chain or down here. I'm going to recommend that you give it up here. So I'm going to assist you, Daniel, right? I'm going to give you prompts here. Then I'm going to prompt you after you got in the bathroom to get your toothbrush. I'm going to prompt you after you get your toothbrush to put on the toothpaste. I'll set the timer. I'll help you brush the top and the bottom. And then I might just look for this last step from Daniel in the beginning, because I want it to be very low effort, right? I'm only asking for one step, and I'm going to give Daniel a lot of reward. So I'm going to help him with all of these, and this is going to be the only thing he needs to do to then go and get the reward. And that's why I like to help up in the top of the steps, so that then right after the child does this, they get the reward right away. Because then, once he's able to do this consistently, that path's already been created. Now I can ask him to do this one too. And then I ask him to do this one and this one and this one, and then all of a sudden he's doing it all by himself. But if I start off and I say you have to do all these on your own, my effort's probably, even as great as you can make W.B. Mason in the house, you probably can't make it like a 20. Right? You probably can't go from never brushing teeth by himself to doing it all right away, right? And that's how you can chain this up. And that's how you mold the effort. You see how we're always bringing it back to the fundamental pieces, right? We're not talking about kind of like a theory of teaching toothbrushing, right? You know, this isn't something that's kind of specific to toothbrushing per se. It's just using this same fundamental. In this case, is toothbrushing. Now, you also brought up dressing. Dressing could be something similar. I kind of have a different example there. But if it was dressing, it could just be a similar thing. I'd say, what are the steps I'm going to teach? Right? I put down the steps, and then my signal leads to the next one. So see, you notice, like, going in the bathroom, the signal for the toothbrush, right? So maybe my first thing is, hey, it's time to get ready for school. I want that to be the signal to go over to the clothes that have already been picked out, right? The first thing I want you to do is to remove all of your current clothes. That's your signal to put on your underwear. Your underwear is your signal to put on your pants. Your pants is your signal to put on your shirt, right? And then potentially you're done, or maybe you put on your socks. But you got to break down the steps first, you know? And I personally like starting off with just requiring the last step and then moving my way up to the next steps, because it's a lot less effort. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to then help you, these are the clothes over here, Tim, that we're going to have. Okay, now I'm going to help you to take off your clothes. I'm going to help you to put on your underwear. I'm going to help you to put on your pants. I'm going to help you to put on your shirt. Now I have the socks. Here you go. Mm-hmm. Right? Oh, you put your socks on. Great job. And then insert reward there. Right? And then, okay, you're able to put on the socks. Great. Now the next step you're going to do is putting on your pants. Or sorry, it was the shirt in that instance. And then I'll go to the pants, and then I that's how you're chaining it up.
So
yes.
Are you assuming here that the person, the child, has all the skills to do it? So it's not like a motor issue. Like putting on a sock can be tricky, right?
Yes.
All of this can be tricky with motor skills.
Yes, but that's a really good point.
Uh-huh.
I am assuming with this that the only barrier is actually learning the routine itself. Mm-hmm. It's not a skill deficit within the routine. Mm-hmm. If you have a fine motor deficit or a gross motor deficit, that's definitely something that you're going to want to get a consult from an OT
Right.
or a PT for something like that.
Right.
But what I would say is that what they're going to be inserting is essentially what level of help should be given at each step.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a fine motor deficit for putting on the socks,
Mm-hmm.
are we either trying to remediate that, or are we going to put in a permanent accommodation that person's always going to use, like a sock donor, right? You know, and we're going to say, okay, they're always going to have a sock donor. So part of the steps is getting your sock donor,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning how to use that independently.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
but that's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's if there's a skill deficit, this is just how to change the behaviors of doing the routine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you do have a skill deficit, you really got to look into that.
And where do pictures fit in for you with
Yeah.
something like teaching a routine?
Yep, that's a great question. So oftentimes when you see this being done, you'll see there'll be the task analysis will be pictures. So there'll be a picture associated with going into the bathroom, right? Getting the toothbrush. The way that I think about that is a prompt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's helping reduce the effort
Mm-hmm.
needed, right, to learn the steps themselves. So
So
it's a
like,
prompt in and of itself. I look at the picture, and the picture is telling me what to do next. Completely fine. It just needs to be faded. So that's I think a little bit different. That's using pictures to communicate. So that would be him talking to you, right, Felicia?
Yeah.
I think what Sharon was talking about is more almost me talking to the student through pictures, right?
Yes.
So having the pictures of everything and me saying, here's how you do it. So it's a completely fine way to do that. It reduces the effort because I'm looking at the picture for what to do next. The only little caveat to that is if at some point I might need to brush my teeth somewhere without my pictures, I have to fade. You have to fade that, but you can fade it. You can fade it. I mean, you can have how many pictures in front of you right now? But like, let's say this was, if we can visualize, I'll make it blank. Let's say that all the pictures were here, and all these steps were pictures, right? If I trained with the pictures over and over and over again, once you've learned this step down here, now maybe what I do is I cover the picture, or I cut it off, or whatever, and then I can slowly fade the pictures too. The fundamental there is that if I have a supported place, it's not typically recommended to just have it there one day and then rip it away for the next day. Right? It's like if I'm on 10 milligrams of a medication and my doctor wants to have me not take the medication anymore, they're probably going to wean me down. Probably not going to go from 10 milligrams to 0. So it's a similar thing. If I have the pictures all up here, I can fade it. It's better to fade it than to just kind of pull it away. But the fundamental that it's doing is it's reducing the effort. It's reducing the effort level over here, which is always a good thing. That's why you see pictures often used, right? Because it reduces that. All I would say is that sometimes you might have to put in support that then you take out. So sometimes you might, but you have to take it out, you know. And I would agree that, let's say I'm working with Daniel, right? And I try to go through this and just do it verbally or without the pictures, but it's not working. I might then say, look, I've got to insert the pictures to just teach him at home how to brush his teeth, right? And if you do go to a hotel, you know what? Just for now, while we're training, do it all for him in the hotel or bring the pictures, right? But then I would fade the pictures out over time, you know? But I would agree that if you don't need to put in a support, don't put it in. If I can teach Daniel how to brush his teeth without the pictures, don't do the pictures, right? But if I'm running into a barrier and I can't do it, I might put the pictures in. But then I need to take it out, right? It's not always a long-term solution. You know, but this is where you get into, and we kind of talked about before too, like kind of practical strategies that we're talking about, and then when you really need a clinical team. Because you do get really individualized with stuff like this. You know, I've certainly worked with clients before that we just weren't going to be able to generalize the skill without some form of support. But that we then create something for them that they would take with them, you know, that they would bring around that would be kind of a support for them. And then the long-term solution has to be that it's something that you can use that's just in the natural environment.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what would happen here too. So what eventually, if I'm going to be someone who can brush my teeth anywhere, all these signals have to be chained together, right? So that even if I'm in a hotel or I'm sleeping at something like a friend's house or something like that, that I still know that my signal isn't to enter just my bathroom. It's to enter any bathroom, right? And then I can get my toothbrush. But my toothbrush might be in a different place, you know? Sometimes you have to work toward that, you know? But if the supports are good, they have to get faded. If all Daniel ever learned how to do was how to point to the chocolate munchkin on your phone, that's going to be a problem. Because sometimes your phone's not going to work,
Yeah.
or you're not going to be there. It's going to limit his independence, you know? One way to think about that, though, about generalizing the skill to somewhere else is when you go, how many people have been on vacation, right? And have been having a fun time at the vacation, but kind of deep down wanting to get home at some point. Yeah. Isn't that a little bit weird? You look forward to the vacation so much, but then like halfway through you're like, it'd be nice to go home. It'd be nice to be in my bed. It'd be nice. That is your brain telling you, hey, I've been looking for my common signals and all the paths in my brain, but I can't find them because we're staying in a weird place. So get me back to the place that I know. So the concept of generalizing skills, I think oftentimes people associate that like solely with people with autism, but that is not specifically just something that is always present for the diagnosis of autism, or that is unique to just people with autism. All of us can have a hard time generalizing skills as well, right? So it's just, I think that's something important to keep in mind and to think about, that it is kind of hard to go out and generalize the skills that we have. But I will tell you, the more that the skill has been learned in this kind of systematic fashion, the easier it's going to be for your brain to generalize the skill. Right? The more that I've chained together, okay, it's when I enter a bathroom. Now I look for my toothbrush. Okay, now it's in the travel bag over here and not in my common spot right next to my sink, but I'm looking for a toothbrush. And that is my signal to put on toothpaste. Wait a second, this isn't the toothpaste I usually use. Okay, but it is toothpaste, right? So if I chain these together, and I learn that they're the signal, it's easier to generalize. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen, right? But it's a lot easier to generalize once I can string all these together. Right? The other example that I have here is, and let's come up here to the reward too. So this one right here, as once done with each task, this one right here would get 5 minutes on the iPad, and then they get 20 when they're all done. This is an example of, oftentimes people ask me, and they say, well, in the afternoon, my son just comes home, watches the iPad, and doesn't really do anything about it, right? So this is kind of a nice way to teach a schedule. I'm not just saying first task, second task, third task, fourth task. But you can kind of insert in here a task, a leisure skill, anything like that to kind of run through. And then what I'm weaving in here is I'm giving 5 minutes on the iPad after each one of these things is done, right? And then I'm giving a big reward at the end when they're all done. So it could look something like this. This could also be a morning routine when I'm getting ready for school. This could be a nighttime routine when I'm getting ready for bed. This could be completing homework and some daily chores, right? I'm just saying task here. But in this case, I would just insert task 1, right? So maybe that's something like I complete my homework, and then I'm going to get my 5 minutes of my iPad time. And then I'm going to do step 2, and maybe that's a chore. And then I'm going to get 5 minutes of my iPad. Right? So what I'm chaining together now is a routine, like an actual routine. When I get home from school, I do fill in the blank. And I'm using reward as I go. Reward is what's chaining these things together. Right? Because the reason that I'm completing my homework is to get my 5 minutes iPad. And the reason I'm doing my chore is to get that 5 minutes iPad. And then in this case, I put like a big reward of 20 minutes at the end. Now these could be adjusted, moved around. And don't forget what we talked about before. How powerful you have as the reinforcer is how much effort you can ask for. So if I'm trying to do something like this, and I'm working with a client who's never had an afternoon routine ever before, it's going to probably be a pretty high effort response to then have them do a structured schedule. I need to have a really powerful reward over here, or I reduce the effort, and maybe I just look for two things to be done at first. And I build my way up to, I think this one has 5. I'm still coming back to this though, and I'm moving these levers around. Right? If I have a really powerful reward, if Daniel really wants WB Mason, well then maybe I can kind of get a couple more in here. Are you ever too old to learn a new routine? That's a good question. So if we think back to our video, remember our video? Right? Where I don't have it on. Should I put it on this one? Our video where you have that path that was grooved in. The more that I walk down the path, the deeper the path is. Right? So if I'm 2, I can't have paths that are that deep because I'm only 2 years old. I've only had 2 years to trod in the path. But if I'm 22 years old, if I've been doing a routine for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it's deep. It's etched in there deep, but it doesn't mean it can't be changed. It just means it's going to take longer for the brain to learn another path. So it's like, it's deep in there. I'm going to have to build a path on the side. It's going to take a while for my brain to build in this new path. But the only way that my brain is going to switch from a path that it has been walking down forever, the only way that I can get it to switch is by a reward being high and effort being low.
That's why I'm asking, is it too old to
No,
try?
definitely not too. It never is. It never is. And that's what we know now from the science of neuroplasticity is that it's harder, it's more difficult, it's probably going to take a long time, but she can learn a new routine. This that I'm talking about right here applies to all of us, all the time, everyone we've ever known. It's the same thing. There has to be, my brain is not going to do anything that isn't going to get it a reward at the end. It's not going to do it. It's been programmed to not do that. Think about if my brain wasn't programmed to do that, I'd just be randomly doing stuff. You know, I just feel like, ooh, that looks shiny. Well, I'll go over there and do that. Oh, that looks shiny too, right? My brain is programmed to be looking for this always. What's the lowest amount of effort I need to do to get the highest amount of reward? And that's what my brain goes to. So it'd be the same thing with your daughter. You know, we're going to need to find a reward, but then once we groove in the path, it's going to take a little while. But then that becomes the new default. The brain's going to go to its default path unless it gets convinced to go somewhere else. So if we can find a way to kind of chain in those steps, if I'm going at 26 and I'm trying to teach a new thing, the other thing I would do is I got to bring the effort down really, really low. I need the effort to be really small. So I might look at something like, let's just chain together 2 tasks. You know, let's do maybe. So brush your teeth is one that she often forgets. Is there another one that she'll forget a lot? Okay, deodorant. Yep. We can get her to focus from the reward. Maybe the first thing we chain together is brush the teeth, put on the deodorant, get the reward. But we have to deliver it right then, right? It's brushing the teeth, deodorant, and then have her coming to you and saying, I did those 2 things. And then reward, right? Have to have the reward. Because if we don't, she's not going to chain them together. Money's perfect. I mean, then I insert, she's already spending the money anyway, right? I insert money here, right? And And then I get really into that, and we get really into that part. So if you're tipping, and when I tell people all the time too, when I talk about money, they're often looking at me like, well, I'm just going to go get a bunch more money out of a tree. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, how much money would you typically give her now a week, right? And let's say that's $10 or whatever, or 5 or 3 or whatever, right? You just shift it. You shift it here, right? And then chain that together. And then have her coming to you and saying, I want that $5, I want that $10, or whatever that is. And they're like, look, this is how that's going to happen. This is how that money is going to get delivered. And then you can keep chaining these things together. Once this gets chained in, now I say, okay, then that leads to getting dressed on your own, doing this on your own, doing this on your own, and getting out of the house. And that's how you get to that place where you don't have to worry about it. Where you are the signal right now. You saying, did you brush your teeth? Did you put on you're the signal, right? Which is, that's what a good parent does, But you just transfer that over, and you're using reward, and then you're going to create the new path. And then that's going to be the new path. And then you can fade. Here's the thing. You can then fade the money out. You are not going to have to be giving money for this her entire life. Because once this path is already grooved in, remember my toilet training story, right? About my mom used to give me the orange lifesavers?
Yeah.
She doesn't give them to me anymore. Because it grooved in the path. Hopefully I'm not going to have to give my son the videos anymore. Once the path is in there, you take the reward out. The reward comes out, but the path stays. The path stays. And then it gets chained together. It's like, oh, I put on my deodorant, I brushed my teeth, and now you've been uninserted. There's no more mom prompt. Right? The prompt for her is then going to be, my prompt to brush my teeth, put on my deodorant, is doing the other thing. Let the reward do the work for you. Right now, you're doing all the work. You're the overseer. You're giving the prompts. You're saying, did you remember to do this? You're saying, did you remember to do that? Let the reward do the work for you. Right? Let Deshaun come to you and say, I want, and they're going to want the reward, right? And then you say, oh, sure, no problem. You can have that. Here's how you get it, though. And then that's where you insert these other things right here. You're going to get that when I see you brush your teeth and then put on your deodorant. And then you just keep upping that over time. It's brush teeth, deodorant, putting on the clothes, right? And then it's brushing hair. And then I want to see you do more and more and more. And one thing I'll say is kind of a word of encouragement is that, I guess I'll go back to my kids. I had my oldest that potty trained herself. I have my son who's now been very difficult to potty train. It hasn't. My wife and I have used the same strategies. We've done the same thing. They're two different people. They're two different people. And I'm going to come right back to the fundamental right here, right? For my daughter, it was a low effort response to potty training. She potty trained herself, right? Yeah, that was awesome. That was great. For my son, it's a high effort response. And I would say probably for your son and your daughter, structuring their morning routine has always been a high effort response, right? And so they've leaned on you to be their prompt through the whole thing. All you're going to do now is you're going to do two things, though. You're not saying structure your whole morning routine, and that's the only place you give reward. You're bringing down the effort, and you're just going to have your daughter chain two things together, and then you're going to give a reward, right? And then you're going to keep adding on steps as she's mastered this, and that path has been built in the brain. You're going to keep adding steps and keep adding steps and keep adding steps. Part of what's happening when this is happening is the brain is building in the path of learning these tasks, or brushing teeth or whatever, but it's also learning that doing things independently gets me rewards. So you have like kind of that double, that's another path that's kind of also being inserted in there, right? And there's just very low amount of research on that right now, but I can tell you from doing this for many, many years, I've seen this happen over and over again, where we've trained things in therapy that the child has learned, but then they start learning all sorts of other things too that we didn't directly train, right? And it's like, well, because they're learning to learn. And they're learning that doing things independently and talking and doing all this other stuff is giving them reinforcement, so they're like teaching themselves. It's like this other process that's happening in the brain. So I think you might be surprised, Lisa, about chain a couple of these things together, and your daughter might be like, actually, this is a little bit easier. You know, now I don't have to listen to my mom all the time, or have her ask me if I brush my teeth, or if I put on my deodorant, because I already did, Mom. Yeah, now what do I get? And that's what will happen at first. Now what do I get? But then you can fade out the what do I get? Because what she's going to be getting is not having to have you ask her what she needs, and getting to be more independent. You know, so that's another side benefit that's always really good. And that comes from everything that we talk about communication, teaching behavior, the reinforcement systems, the whole thing. You know? And if you're engaged in a therapy program, you'll kind of see that happen.
Yeah,
Other questions? Felicia, yes.
my son's 28 years old. And how do I
Right.
get MBA?
Did you say 28?
20.
Or 20, that's right. Yep. Well, he's so qualified at the age of 20.
Oh.
So I would work with the DMC team,
Oh.
and I think they might be able to help you connect you, because I think it would definitely be very helpful. And then you'd be able to get in with some clinical support too. So we're talking about practical strategies in here, but really the way that you kind of be able to cultivate and maintain these over time is you have a clinical team that can help you to do that. I highly recommend that for everybody.